Hello and welcome to Matrix Live Season 2, Episode 16. That's the right one.
Yep.
Direct live from the balcony of our offices in the British summer.
Yeah.
It happened.
Yeah, it happened. It's happening today. We're making the most of it because it will clearly be gone tomorrow. So, different format this week. In that, as we said last time, we're doing the whole idea of This Week in Matrix. Shamelessly ripping off This Week in Rust and other projects where there's a blog post that says everything that's happening in Matrix land. Now, it's a bit tricky because obviously we do this video blog to tell people supporting us on Patreon and LiberaPay, etc., what we're up to. So inevitably it's going to be biased towards the matrix.org core team and what we're doing on Riot and stuff at New Vector here. Now, so what we've done is to put together the blog post, and Amandine has got like 13 minutes, so I've got to talk quick. So
I have journalists calling me.
You've got a journalist calling you?
Yes.
Ah, do you want to talk to the journalist?
On live.
Yeah, probably not
Maybe.
live. Go talk to them. Seriously,
Okay.
I can do the community thing. You can comically walk off to the back of the shop and talk to the journalist.
I go back in the office.
Oh god, that's probably not the best. Anyway, as I was saying, so basically we've got massive blog posts that Ben has very kindly put together based on everything that people have come up with in the hash This Week in Matrix on matrix.org room, and we've got 16 updates so far. I don't think it makes sense to me to try to talk through them all. I'll try to skim through them quickly and call out some of the highlights, and then we'll talk through the actual stuff that the team here have been up to as well. Hopefully this is a good balance of stuff. So very quickly on the ecosystem update side of things, stuff happening in Drupal land on John at Freelock, updating the Matrix API module, great stuff. MXISD, so Mac stores identity server project in Java, which supports Federation, has hit version 1.0, and I think that's the first ever project in the Matrix ecosystem to be branded with a 1.0, so huge congratulations to Max for putting it together. Neko on the Qt side of things is now at 0.3, lots of work happening on end-to-end encryption using the kind of shared initiative whose name I'm blanking on, which is Matrix Olm Wrapper, which is going and doing a community-led C++ wrapper around the Olm library for integrating with Matrix clients of any flavor. Very exciting stuff there. Meanwhile, the GNOME community on Fractal have been hacking away. 0.126 of Fractal was released this week, and you have Markdown support landing since then. It now builds without hacking it on macOS. All sorts of other exciting things. On libqt matrix, Kitsune released 0.2 a few weeks ago, and it's looking pretty good. New stuff is redaction support, file transfer, room creation, account data, and all sorts. Then we've got a new bot from Travis called Matrix Monitor Bot, which is measuring latency across sets of servers across all of Matrix. We'll be running one on the matrix.org server, which will be very embarrassing, I suspect. But if you're interested in participating in a kind of global latency monitoring thing, go talk to Travis about that. Then on the UMatrix project, which is the abundant UBports matrix client, Nought 10, there was published to the open store this week, which includes unranked counts. Very, very cool to see UMatrix progressing. On the home server side of things, stuff is happening on Construct, which is JZK, or probably JZK's fork of the Charybdis IRCD, which basically turns the IRCD into a C++ home server. And this is based on looking at the commit log on the project. Particularly interesting on our side is that it has been finding some nasty behavior on Synapse by looking at the Federation logs on the server. Particularly, we've been looking into presence bugs, which it's been highlighting. And in general, it looks like the Federation support is progressing pretty well there, including, of course, EDU handling for presence and typing data. Then you've got a horrifying project from Tyler called Matrix Puppet Maxis, which uses Matrix to send SMSs via XMPP on Android, and Amandine is trying to break back in, I think, or giving up on time, or being called by more journalists. There'll be an explanation in a minute why she keeps getting called by journalists. And then Matrix Register bot. Oh yeah, sorry. The Maxis project is hilarious. Obviously, don't use this at home, kids, but it's very amusing that it exists, and it's also got some potential too, especially as the official SMS gateway that we were running no longer runs. Matrix Register bot from Crumble, which is automated bot for enabling two-step registration to Synapse. Then Kader and Solidry have been working on a project called Skill Picard, and Picard is a way of migrating an entire Slack community into Matrix. Now, very exciting this, it will basically keep tracking the Slack community and auto bridging and creating new rooms as they come in. Haven't tried it yet. We also have a Slack migration thing that Tom, or Lampholder, wrote that we need to look at too, but having better ways to migrate people over from Slack is surely only a good thing. Opstroid as well, and that's integrating through into Opstroid. Amandine has now run out of time and is being constantly called by journalists. I'll just do it this week. I'm sorry.
Just do it, and it'll be here next week.
Okay, thank you.
Have fun, enjoy your beer.
Thank you. Cheers. Twitch Bridge from MT Arnold has started off in Go. Really fun one is Idle RPG. So this is the RPG on verse.im community who are doing a whole bunch of automated RPG work on top of Matrix, which is really exciting. And then on the spec side of things from the community, Kitsune has taken the initiative to try to get a proper Matrix URI scheme out there at last. Now, pause for blinds to be lowered next door. We've been way overdue having an official URI scheme for Matrix. The thing that's got in the way has been the bike shed potential, really, in terms of what it should look like, as well as the fact that our current IDs don't really map to URIs well at all. Lots of discussion about it. We went and wrote a test jig in about 10 different languages for testing different URI schemes. The document, though, is now up as a spec proposal. Early days, comments and contributions very welcome. So that's it on the sort of community contributed stuff from this week in Matrix. Meanwhile, in the core team, he says, falling off his chair. Riot Web. I've been working on the great relayering PRs, which have now landed, which merges the Riot Web code into a single repository. So everything is now in Matrix React SDK, no more duplicate PRs, CSS and JavaScript live in the same repository. The world is hopefully a much, much better place. It should be much more fun to hack on. Anybody with an open PR against the Riot Web repository will need to reopen them against React SDK, but this should be pretty easy because you'll just be merging it into the existing PRs you probably had open already on React SDK. Meanwhile, there's been lots of work on replies, which is properly semantic threaded replies, not full threading, but getting there, that Michael or Tech Guy has been working on, and it's almost landed, looking good, looking at how to do it on mobile now. And then also test coverage. This is a particularly sensitive subject, given we've got regressions in 14 and better tests would prevent the regressions, so we're doing some work on that, as well as a bunch of other bits and bobs before we land 15, which will also include the long-awaited stickers. Meanwhile, on Riot Mobile, we've got new releases on the horizon, just cut today actually, on iOS and Android. I saw it go through to the App Store a few minutes ago, at least for a review. We have a new guy, Benoit Marty, who's joined us in France on the Android side, acting as the lead Android dev. He started on Monday, and there's lots of exciting stuff going on there. Then we've got some finalizing user interface for configuring the push notification permissions. You probably know that push notifications on Android have been a nightmare, and it turns out it's basically a UX problem, so we've been trying to prompt people in the right places to do the right notifications. Let's see how well that works. Then sticker viewing happening there, including animated stickers and fixing crashes on iOS, and a lot of time spent supporting the French government in terms of their Matrix activity. And in fact, this explains why Amandine's been lost on the phone all day, because the French government have just put out a press release. By the time you listen to it, it should be on the news sources confirming that their project is indeed built on Matrix and Riot. The initial announcement last week was a little bit I guess focused on the business side rather than the tech side, so nothing mentioned it being us and Matrix, whereas this formally confirms it. So that's why there are a whole bunch of journalists wanting to talk in French with Amandine about the project there. Lots of good, interesting coverage about Matrix in that context. If you haven't read some of the articles, then I'd recommend taking a look. Finally, on the back-end side of things, it's a big one. Lots and lots and lots of stuff happening in Synapse. Just for a change, operational firefighting continuing. This is stopping malformed events from breaking Federation, particularly ones with lots and lots of parents. Rich has been doing a lot of work on that, and I think we've got at least an improved situation now. Investigating the thundering herds of present CDUs that Joseph K pointed out, and then keeping or trying to keep Freenode from lagging, but honestly it's been tough as the traffic keeps going up, especially with the French government news this week. Meanwhile, the really exciting stuff has been happening on Eric's side, as he's been spending the whole week working on incremental state resolution. So this is the big algorithmic win to go and speed up how state res works on Matrix, and specifically on Synapse. Or not specifically, especially on Synapse, but generally across all of Matrix. It's ended up taking the form of a very scary-looking formal mathematical proof that the proposed algorithm actually works, which you can see if you have at least an undergraduate degree in maths or equivalent. And then also wrote a test jig in Rust to prove or see how well it works today and how fast it could run with the old algorithm and how fast it can run with the new algorithm, which has lent itself to a couple of slightly insane suggestions to embed that code in Synapse as an FFI module or a microservice so that people can use this Rust and state resolution stuff and benefit from all the speeds. Then Ansible, the repository is actually public up at matrix-ansible. It's not finished, it's still in dev, the work's still happening on the develop branch, but it's very nearly there thanks to massive work from Mike K. We'll blog about it properly when it's ready for use in anger. And then Dave has been working on an experiment which may or may not be related to the French government of synchronizing profile data from home servers into identity servers, so that hypothetically if you had 35 home servers and identity servers, each one per ministry or something, and you wanted to have a global user directory across the entire network, wouldn't it be nice if all those home servers could publish some kind of display name and avatar information to the identity server cluster such that some people could use it as a address book? So that's what we've been experimenting with there. Not going to be turning it on matrix.org anytime soon, and it's not part of the spec currently. It's very much experimental stuff that we're doing, but if it works out, then we'd expect to be updating the IS API with that stuff. Finally, lots of activity happening on GDPR, which is the European Data Protection Initiative, for which we have the deadline of May the 25th to go and make sure that at least the services we run as New Vector, like the matrix.org home server, uphold our GDPR requirements. This is a really interesting exercise because it's very unclear how far we need to take it. And we obviously want to take it to the level that it's useful, privacy-wise. In terms of the actual legal letter of the law, it's an even more interesting challenge. And what we're doing is doing the thought experiment of the most extreme interpretation we can provide, where it's possible for users to delete both their accounts, the data they have ever sent, and even, and this is the really interesting one, the MXIDs they sent that data from. And currently that's baked into the Matrix room DAG, and it's impossible to redact in its current form. So we've been looking at a pseudonym. I've literally had that much beer, so I'm not going to be able to blame that on not being able to say pseudonymize. But we've been looking at how to pseudonymize the MXIDs in a room, which could be really interesting in terms of giving each room its own pseudonymous set of MXIDs, so you can't correlate users between different rooms. And if a user wants to delete their MXID, their existence, their identity from Matrix, then they can just delete the mappings of those pseudonymous MXIDs to their real MXIDs. It's all a thought experiment. Rich VDH is working on this and writing it up. If we do go down that path, it's going to be a massive Federation change. Well, not massive, but it's going to be a version change in the Federation API, because MXIDs are no longer going to look like the MXIDs that we have today. But frankly, it's something that we've needed for ages, and it could also help with decentralized accounts, it could help with decentralized identity, it could help with account migration, all sorts of fun stuff. If we get it right, it could be really successful. But we're not, who knows, watch this space, and we'll show you once we've got a an example of, or at least a spec proposal of what it could look like. Finally, on Synapse, more Python 3 PRs are happening from Notifile, thank you very much, and they've got a bit lost behind everything else we've been doing here, but I saw that they were getting reviewed a couple of hours ago. On Dendrite, it's still stuck behind Synapse work. AP Whitehat, though, has been doing a bunch of useful PRs on it, so thank you, AP Whitehat. And barring disasters, we do have 2 new folks starting at the end of May who will be working on back-end stuff to help have more momentum on this. Finally, Matrix in the news. Obviously, lots of chat about French government activity, and we've also chucked in This Week in Matrix, the new rooms roundup that. So I'm not going to read through the random new rooms which have been announced there. Lots of talking. I wonder whether that was remotely useful, and how we're going to get the balance right on this in future. I mean, the idea is that the blog post will be the canonical one. Can't be fun to keep doing the video blog too, though, but perhaps we'll go and focus on more specific bits, or more specific members of the team, or more specific projects, rather than literally reading a blog post out to you, as fun as it is being a kind of accessibility radio announcer. But hopefully, give us some feedback. Tell us on the YouTube comments, or the Patreon comments, or the supporter rooms on Matrix, and thank you for listening. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for continuing to fly Matrix. Bye.